And welcome back to the MMcast. I'm your host, Marshall James, and I'm here with my special co-host, Tony Houst of House of Cards MTG Online. Tony, how you doing?
Doing pretty well.
So Tony was great to come and be a guest on one of our Monday Night Commander streams. You should always tune in every Monday to Kess Wiley's Twitch. That's Alex Kessler's Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Kess Wiley, where we do Commander streams. And we've been doing a lot of Commander Artisan streams, trying to do them at least once every time a set comes out, because now Wizards is thankfully, blessedly, putting lots of powerful commons and uncommons and often many uncommon legendaries in each set, and so we got to show them off. And so we did one for Streets of New Capenna, and Tony came on there. And we also had Anthony Alongi, which is like longtime content creator, making lots of cool stuff. Back before we called it content and we called them articles. Like, dude wrote for paper, published, like he has printed words out there. And he brought a Queza, auger, Queza, something like that. But
the weird cephalid thing.
Yeah, stomped all of us proper, but yeah, spoiler alert. But yeah, so I thought, Tony, it'd be great to come on and talk this week because we've had now two sets in a row, two exciting sets in a row that really help out the Artisan Commander format. And so I want to dig right in and talk about it. But real quick, so Artisan Commander, it's technically a sub-format of Commander where you opt into not playing any rares or mythic rares. Otherwise, it has the same ban list as Commander, so you can play your Artisan Commander decks against regular power decks. I do it all the time. I've definitely even won with them because it's not exactly a power level change. I mean, it's certainly lower power level, but not by a significant margin. A lot of the most powerful and revered cards in Magic in the format turn out to be uncommons and commons, like Sol Ring, Rhystic Study, Sylvan Library, Demonic Tutor, those sorts of things. So it's more of a deck building challenge. And the thing that really excites us about it is it allows these uncommon commanders, which usually don't get to see a lot of excitement unless they're like Tatyova, really get their time to shine. And so there are a couple hallmarks of the format, and one of them was, for the longest time, only two colors and monocolor legends. That was just kind of how it was. There were three color ones from back in original Legends that were all on the reserved list. So despite being uncommons, they were like $80 minimum or something, and they were terrible. All three of them were real bad.
Ragnar allows like regeneration or something, so
I think he can tap to regenerate.
I was trying to make it work before Capenna came out, but I think that was always like, hey, if you have money's no object, then go for it.
And but one thing I was really hoping when they announced that Streets of New Capenna, we knew it was going to be a tricolor set, that hopefully we were going to get a signpost uncommon in each of the crime families, and boy howdy did we. We got a whole cycle of 5, and all 5 of them are pretty awesome. So I want to kind of launch right into it. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, because every time we do one of these, I like to give a count. Like, the number of available legends is growing and growing with every set. And as of this recording, there are currently 197 legal legendary creatures that can be your commander in Artisan. 30 of them have partner, which means that's 435 possible combinations just there. And with Baldur's Gate coming out, we'll talk about after New Capenna, we have 20 new commanders that let you choose a background, and there are 20 available backgrounds, so the math makes 400. So Baldur's Gate alone added 410 new commanders. But we're going to start with a measly 5 because they are the 5 that allow us to play 3-color. So Tony, tell me your initial thoughts about the 3-color legends out of New Capenna. Is there ones that are pretty exciting to you?
Yeah. So the initial thing I'm looking at is what is it adding to the format having these 3 color options available. So what I was looking at for where the format was before, what is strongest, what's like really starting to come to the top of like, hey, somebody's sitting at the table, they have a deck that's this kind of archetype. This is something to like really take a look at and give respect to. Is Red Black Sacrifice is super powerful. Anybody who has a decent amount of people who are playing Artisan probably has somebody in their playgroup that's playing Jury, because that's just a really good, consistent deck. Blue White Blink is also really good. I know Kessler's Vega deck is right around, like, does some exile stuff, a little forecast, but is mostly a Blink style deck, and reusing those ETBs is super good. Mole Drifter, getting any consistency there. And then Blue-Black combo is also like really powerful because you have Demonic Consultation, you have Lab Maniac. There's a bunch of combos that the pieces of those are all uncommons in blue and black.
Yeah.
So you have all that hyper consistency within those, and all those slot really well into these ally color shards. So you have, especially Grixis to me, is you get 2 of those. So you get your sacrifice and your combo together, which of course I married those 2 together with Cormella, because you got that, and she's a Snapcaster. It's disgusting.
So Cormella, so she's the Grixis / Maestro's legendary, and she makes mana, and when she dies, she gets back a spell from your graveyard, and it's not hard for people to put together that, her plus reanimation spells means you could start doing sacrifice loops with her and spells, and every time you perform this loop, a creature ETBs, dies, and a spell gets cast. So if you have Magecraft triggers or anything like that, I believe it was actually during our stream, like you pointed out, that there have been an uptick in the last several years of Black getting these before you die, you don't spells that the next time this creature would die, it comes back from the dead. And most of the time they bring them back tapped, but there was at least one in Kaldheim that brings them back untapped, and you're like, this is the key. So then Cormella can come back and keep making mana. What do you remember what that one is called?
That one, I think, is Demonic Gifts, and is the weird one that literally all the rest of them are tapped. We have, like, our Malakir Rebirth. We have a lot of similar cards they'll try to give, like, Indestructible to, but that's not really what we want here, because we want Cormella to come in untapped. She has haste, so you could just tap her and keep looping.
Yeah.
And you don't need extra pieces for that, so you just have that and her, and then a sack outlet and a blood artist, and then you just win the game.
Yeah, and so one thing I think is kind of interesting is you mentioned combo, and these 5, aside from Mr. Orfeo, the other 4 all lend themselves to potentially to combo. But something that I think is really exciting actually about these 5 is that they're pretty open-ended. None of them really force you to play any specific way, which, considering they are now all anchoring an arch or an arc in the color pie for our format, I really appreciate that. Like, Quezza's like, hey, you can play Esper, and every time you draw cards, I'm going to give you some life and slowly kill an opponent. But do with that what you will. I mean, you can lean into it as a combo. You can lean in trying to see how many, can I Windfall, can I Tolarian Winds, can I Whirlpool Rider, and see like how much I can dig through my deck. Or I've been trying to build a Quezza deck that leans into all the dungeon delving and initiative cards from Baldur's Gate so that I can just play Artisan Dungeons. And then Quezza's just going to be like, yeah, and I'll be occasionally gaining you some life and helping you pick off opponents who are getting low. But yeah, Lagrella, Rocco, Cormella, and Quezza can all be the linchpins of certain combo decks as well.
Rocco, I think, is really interesting specifically for that because you have all the tutoring that's just built into there. So I have yet to really delve into what that is, but in Naya colors, any sort of creature-based combo is just going to be disgusting.
I mean, it's so crazy that someone pointed out that, like, obviously the first thing you go and get with Rocco is Wirewood Symbiote, which costs just 1, so the X just equals 1, and then Rocco is an elf, so Wirewood Symbiote's like, okay, so you probably, playing Naya, so you might have tapped an Avacyn's Pilgrim to help cast Rocco, and Rocco for 1, you go get Wirewood Symbiote, pick up Rocco, untap your Avacyn's Pilgrim, and now you can start, like, recasting Rocco, you get, like, Devoted Druid Vizier of Remedies, and then I built a Lagrella the Magpie deck, and so Lagrella, you know, she O-rings one thing of your thing and one thing of each of your opponent's things, and so her with like a Fiend Hunter and a Felidar Sovereign creates infinite blinks where she's dancing in and out of the battlefield, and you're triggering a bunch of ETBs and LTBs, and so you're getting to blow up everything with Reclamation Sage, or draw your whole deck with Muldrifter, or gain infinite life when a Soul Sister is in play. So it's only Mr. Orfeo who doesn't seem to make a combo deck, but on the other hand, I got taken out in our game because of Mr. Orfeo, because it turns out doubling power of big, dumb creatures with trample can just get there.
And in that game, that was just commons, too. Like, once we bring that out to all the uncommons, and some of the cards that we're going to talk about today are, like, just them pushing the envelope for how big they can make a splashy uncommon. Like, there's just so many things, and most of them are in black, in green. Maybe you have to sacrifice a thing as a cost to make it, but you're attacking for 10, just kidding, 20, just kidding, 30.
Yeah.
And giving double strike and other, like, it's the most fair out of the 5, but also Jund has access to so many interesting archetypes that having that be the fair one is probably fine, because we're going to get weird Jund sacrifice decks. We're going to get weird I take your thing kind of decks with threaten effects or reanimation or other stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of cards that would have qualified as rares back in the day that are now getting printed at common and uncommon. I have a deck with Brynlin and Galanra from the original Commander Legends, who both are like Simic play big spells. And it turns out there are tons of like worms and giants and serpents in green that are green and blue that are all like rare by pre-modern standards. They're and like trample is super valuable here with Mr. Orfeo, but just really powerful in general in Artisan, because if you're new to the Artisan format, one of the things that really makes it stand out from regular Commander is a real lack in board wipes. There's not a whole lot of board wipes, so creature buildup, big battle cruiser board positions are very common, because no one's going to end of turn Psych Rift, and you can't Wrath of God. But so as a result, flying and trample and other forms of unblockable are worth their weight in gold, because the ground is going to be quickly clogged up with creatures. So there are times where I've like cut some big creature from my deck because I'm like, oh, this thing's just going to be chumped by Sapperling tokens or whatever. The printing of these 5 Tricolor Legends also now open up a bunch of cards that were commons and uncommons, but were not allowed in the format because they were 3-color that were printed back in the day. A lot of things from Shards of Alara, the Charm Cycle from the Invasion Dragons, and the Dissension Splits cards are now legal, whereas previously you couldn't play, Bant Charm or Naya Charm, which are both really excellent charms, and now you can.
I like these for a lot of the more nostalgic theme decks. Cormella, I ended up like really leaning into the combo aspect rather than just doing, here's a bunch of Grixis stuff that I drafted with back in Shards of Alara back, 10 years ago at this point. But you'll be able to go, okay, here's my Naya Cats deck. Here's all the Esper is going to be really interesting because you have all those artifact creatures that are actually tricolor. So that's going to be really cool. Mm-hmm. And that makes 3 different charms that we have, because we have the dragon charms, we have the shard charms, and the family charms.
Yeah.
So you just have so many different utility things you can do.
Yeah, and all those shards are all pretty strong. Like, there are very few of them that aren't worth playing. And plus, you also then get 3 Ravnica charms, because you get to play the 3 guilds that are in your shard or family. So that's pretty exciting. And then also were just a lot of individual cards printed in this set in New Capenna that are pretty exciting for the format. So I made a list of some of them. We don't have to go over all of them, but there are several of them that as soon as they came out, I was like, ooh, can't wait for the Artisan set. One of them is Big Score. I'm a huge fan of Unexpected Windfall, and Big Score is just a second copy of Unexpected Windfall. So gotta love, Red has been really grabbing up card draw and treasure making lately, and there are just tons of decks, the aforementioned Jury, but also I have a Quintorius deck, the Lorehold Archaeologist Elephant, and definitely loves the loot and draw cards. And also an exciting cycle was the sack tap lands. So one of the cool things about the format is your land budget is so much cheaper. Like, it's so much easier to build a good land set. And when your deck is still decent enough to hang at the mid-power regular commander tables. But if you're playing against other fellow artisans, we're all going to be playing a mana base that probably has several more tap lands than the average commander deck. And so everybody's deck is going just that much slower, so then it's less annoying to play a tap land. And the cycle of the sack tap lands, like Botanical Plaza, is just really exciting, because I love a land that fixes mana early, or if you draw it later, it's not going to be a dead card forever. So I don't know if you've been hit with a Dusk Mangler getting reanimated. Oh, there was a Dusk Mangler that got reanimated in our game. Did you reanimate it?
Yep. I brought it back with Cauldron Dance. It was great.
Oh, yeah. So talk about both those cards. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dusk Mangler is a 5/4 for 7 in black. As an additional cost to cast it, you sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life. So usually if you're casting it, you're just going to pay 4 life. Not too big a deal unless you're really at the end of your rope there. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature, discards a card, and loses 4 life. So you don't have to worry about paying that cost if you're bringing it back from the graveyard. There's a older reanimation spell that I was playing called Cauldron Dance, which will take a thing from your hand and a thing from your graveyard, put them both onto the battlefield at the same time. It's in red-black. So you put those both onto the battlefield. The one from the graveyard will go back to your hand at the end of turn, and the one from your hand will go down to your graveyard at the end of turn. So you end up with these weird loops where you're just looping big creatures, reanimation spells, Archaeomancers, looping all that back and forth with sacrifice outlets. I was doing it in Grixis. You could probably do the same in Mr. Orfeo and then punch people with those. And they both get haste, so you're doing that with Dreg Mangler, and they're discarding cards and losing life, and my stuff got targeted out pretty quickly because you do that more than once, the table gets scared.
Yeah, I think we saw a Dusk Mangler get danced into play from your hand, and then the next turn got danced out of the grave into play and then back into your hand, and we're like, okay, hold on. We gotta... And then I think somebody nuked the Cauldron Dance
revolution here. It's great.
Yeah, I think then the Cauldron Dance got exiled from the graveyard before it could keep getting danced. But your deck definitely displayed the power of Cauldron Dance. And then Dusk Mangler, I don't think I'd even seen this card before, and I was just like, wow, we all get hit by like a mini Cruel Ultimatum every time it enters the battlefield. And it's each opponent has to do all 3 things. So yeah, Dusk Mangler definitely became like a primo reanimation target. And the interesting thing is Reanimator is big game in Artisan because most of the powerful reanimation spells you think of, Reanimate, Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, Necromancy, all these are uncommon cards. And then even the ones like Zombify and stuff, they're all uncommons. So one card that I was really excited about was Rumor Gatherer. So Rumor Gatherer does a really fine Mentor of the Meek impersonation for our format, giving white weenie decks a card draw outlet. So this is a 3-mana 2/1 that has Alliance. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you scry 1, and if this is the second time this ability has resolved, you draw a card instead. So you can draw a card pretty much every one of your turns, and if you have a token making ability, you can start making yourself draw cards on your opponent's turns. Like if you make 2 tokens on your opponent's turn, you get to draw cards then too. And so they've been slowly giving white more and more card draw. I guess Mark Rosewer has been overruled. He said he hates Mentor of the Meek, but here we go. We got an uncommon mentor-like effect.
If you're wrong specifically on white for long enough, I think enough people are rising up to say, hey, let's give white some good cards.
Yeah. Let's see. I wanted to talk... Stimulus Package is one that's really exciting to me for all forms of Commander, and this is, wow, like what a powerful uncommon. This is like a total engine card, like Prosperous Bloom from back in the day, but is an uncommon. Stimulus Package is a 4-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you make 2 treasure tokens, so it redeems 2 of its mana right away. It's in Gruul. And you can sack a treasure to create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. So it allows you to immediately convert treasures into humans, or into people, and then if you're playing Mr. Orfeo and have a Pillless Plunderer in play, you can convert those tokens back into treasures ad nauseum. One other one that I thought was interesting is Witty Roast Master. There's a lot of decks that love some Impact Tremors, and here's Impact Tremors on a creature. Witty Roastmaster is a 3-mana 3/2 devil that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So any deck that was already running Impact Tremors, which was a lot of token strategies, now have just another dude who does that. So this set was pretty good about just bringing up a lot of like, oh hey, if you like this thing, there's more of this stuff now, and perhaps a more efficient package. Oh, and then I also had to just put in here Witness Protection, because it's like, one, it's the like cheapest version of this effect, but it's also like the best ever. It's 1 blue mana, enchant creature. Enchanted creature loses all of its abilities, becomes a green and white citizen creature token with base power and toughness 1/1, and its name is Legitimate Business Person.
Legitimate Business Person is the best replacement name.
Right? I love just turning people's commanders into legitimate business people.
Because this is basically like a Song of the Dryads that like we can actually run, which is very useful, because other than that, it's what the Darksteel Mutation can probably do something like this. There's a couple other things, but actually locking down their commander on the field is tough.
Yeah, blue has a few like Frogify, but this is definitely the cheapest. Like this is 1 mana, so this is essentially like blue's sorcery speed Sword to Plowshares. Because, like, making it into a 1/1 with no abilities, now the best they can hope to do with it is chump block. And chumping actually doesn't happen as often as you think in Artisan because the ground stall happens so much, so people just don't attack. So this can remove an annoying commander for a long, long time. You want to talk about 2 of the cards that you have on here?
Yeah. So the one thing that I was looking at from the set was all the different mechanics that we had going on, and Connive is really good, but a lot of the creatures that we have only connive once. They'll connive on like enter the battlefield, and that's okay. It's good and limited, but it doesn't scale up super well in Commander, and even flickering it is only going to get the creature so big. But there are 2 cards that can connive multiple times. One of them is Security Bypass, which for 2 mana in blue, enchant a creature. As long as it's attacking alone, it can't be blocked. So just throw that on your commander. It starts attacking in unblockable, doing some commander damage, closing out the game that way. and when it deals combat damage to a player, it connives. So we're going to be able to draw, discard, filter through our deck, make our commander even bigger every single turn, and that's just going to help close out the game, especially since we're much grindier a format with commons and uncommons because of that lack of board wipes, anything to punch through that damage. We were talking about flying earlier. Unblockable is just as good, if not better. So that one does it, and then Hypnotic Grifter can repeatedly connive for 3 mana. It's a 1/2 for a single blue. So you can get that early and then just repeatedly connive, turn this into a threat on its own, filter through your deck if that's what you're looking to do. And any repeated card draw, even if you have to discard, is super useful.
Yeah. Wow, it's a 1/2 for just 1 mana human rogue with upside. Like, I totally had missed on Hypnotic Grifter, but that's pretty sweet. And having played a bit of the Kamiz Obscura Oculus, the precon deck, like I think Connive it did so many things that I didn't initially like get like, okay, so this is like Merfolk Looter, or this is like Looter Ilcore, but then also I was totally forgetting on and the creature just gets bigger and bigger every turn, and so it inherently builds itself a bit of inevitability. Like, if you don't deal with Hypnotic Grifter, eventually this 1-drop has looted through a bunch of my deck, and now it's a 7/6 or a 6/7, you know?
It makes me happy that Ledger Shredder isn't uncommon, because that card is wrecking every other format that it's legal in. If it was legal in Artisan, it would do the same thing. Yeah,
that card's real good. It's really weird. So, like, I don't know how long you've been playing Magic, but I've been playing since Fallen Empires, and
I've been playing since Judgment.
Okay, sure. So it's wild to be in a time period where we now have like common and uncommon legendary or common and uncommon creatures that would have been rares and would have been format warping rares back in the day, and especially now seeing rares printed that are like mind blowing to me. And then they don't even, like, the card that really blows my mind, and now I'm going off the rails a bit, is Greater Gargaroth, which is like a 5-mana 6/6 Vigilance Trample Reach in green. And it says whenever it attacks or blocks, you draw a card, gain 3 life, or make a beast. And it's like, what the hell? There's so much going on this. Like, I remember when Spiritmonger was printed back in Apocalypse, and we were all like, whoa, it's a 5-mana 6/6 that grows and can be regenerated. And like, Spiritmonger's nothing, right? Like, that card would not see anything now. And Greater Gargaroth came out, and it barely saw any standard play. It sees no play anywhere else.
My main card like that is Scion of the Wild. It's a 1 green for star power toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. It was originally printed in Ravnica City of Guilds, and I'm like, this card's amazing. You throw this with all your Sapperling tokens. I had a big Thalids deck at the time, and it was awesome. And then when they brought it back from Modern Masters 2015, it was common. It went straight from like amazing Timmy rare down to it's a common that you might draft if you happen to be in that deck, but if not, it's garbage.
It's so wild. Yeah. Yeah, like Spiritmonger now feels like it could be a power uncommon, like a signpost uncommon, if for some reason, like, because it can change colors is one of its things. So, like, if for some reason some set, like, Black-Green's thing was changing colors, then Spiritmonger would be a good reprint for that. But, like, it doesn't have trample, it doesn't have any form of evasion, so it's just not impressive anymore. But here we have, like, Greater Gargaroth that has trample, vigilance, and reach. So it can smack without hesitation and still play the best form of defense and gets you value and costs almost nothing and still saw barely any play. Of course, it came out during like Eldraine standard, so it can be forgiven for not overachieving during that time. Oh, I guess one other card that is just really cool from this set that I really want to talk about is Slip Out the Back. It's a 1 blue instant, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, it phases out. So this is like Blue's version of Snakeskin Veil, but even better, because phasing out's even stronger than gaining Hexproof, because now you can dodge. There are a few board wipes, so now you can dodge a board wipe. And I'm just like, I'm a big fan of these sorts of effects, especially I find that more and more in Artisan, I am leaning on my commander a little bit more than maybe I would in a standard commander deck. Because you're needing a lot of synergy to overcome the inherent ground stalls and stall outs that happen. And when you don't have like these big haymaker effects, you kind of really want to lean on the fact that your opening hand will always have at least one card. That card is your commander, and so you can really lean your deck into synergizing with your commander. And so you want your commander to live through everything if it can. So cards like Slip Out the Back have been, and like Slip Out the Back is just 1 blue. All it asks for you to do is keep 1 blue, 1 treasure available, 1 island untapped, and you can just guarantee your commander will survive through anything. And so I was excited to see it, and I'm glad to see phasing has made its return and is being, instead of it being an ability word on cards, which was always terrible for a card to have phasing, but phasing stuff out, on the other hand, is super useful, and I'm glad that Wizards is like, yeah, we'll use this from time to time.
Especially when you've like Voltroned up your commander, you have boots on it, you got 6 counters. It's so annoying to have to take all those off and then put them back on. So phasing, for me, just the time spent in games of just go, we call it, in judging, we've called it putting it under a coffee cup. And so I'll literally take like a cup and put it over the creature when we phase it out in games now. And it's great. And then, oh, cool, it's my upkeep. Take the coffee cup on. All the counters are back.
Yeah. And phasing, I think the nice thing about phasing is it like makes so much sense. I think even to like a new player to just explain like, oh, this card just doesn't exist until the start of my next turn.
Pretend
like,
I'm not there.
Like, just pretend it's not there. It's easier to explain to a person than like blinking a creature. Because then you're like, well, it leaves the battlefield, it's come back, it's treated as a different object. Like a phased out creature stays that object. It comes back, it remembers everything that happened to it beforehand. And also, like, I still need to get my hands on some oubliettes, but it makes oubliette, like we were talking about legitimate business person, but oubliette for black, which comes down and phases out a creature, like, that creature does not change zones. So when you phase out a person's commander, they don't get the opportunity to put that commander in the command zone. So oubliette is like phasing them out for as long as oubliette exists.
Apparently, it taps the creature as it phases back in, too. This is my first time reading the Double Masters retemplating in a very long while.
Oh, yeah, because the original Arabian Nights one allowed it to phase back in tapped. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so oubliette, for all of you, it's apparently only about $1.50. So if you're playing black in Artisan or even in Commander, oubliette's a primo removal spell for commanders because they can't put it in the command zone. They have to find an enchantment removal spell. Okay, so that's a lot of what we just wanted to say about Streets of New Capenna. Really exciting, opening up tricolor to our favorite little format here, and I again just love that the 5 commanders are all pretty open-ended. They all can be built powerfully, or they can be built jankily, and it's fun. I'm 10 out of 10. Way to go, Wizards. Way to design some cool, open-ended, fun commanders. So moving on. The really exciting thing that just happened is the release of Commander Legends 2 Baldur's Boogaloo, which came with... And I mean, like, we knew this was going to be great, right, Tony? Because, like, the first Commander Legends was really, like, the set that kick-started this format. I was already talking to Alex about how much I liked this deck building restriction without rares when Dominaria was around. I built a Slimefoot deck and a Halar deck without rares. But then when they came out with the first Commander Legends with all of its uncommon partners. I was like, dudes, this is like legit. Can we do a Commander stream where we just play this and we'll call it Artisan after what they call it on Arena? And so when they announced there was going to be a second Commander Legends, I was like, hell yeah, it's going to mean like a ton of new Commander options for Artisan. And boy howdy, was it. Because we got a new cycle of 10 uncommon 2-color legends, and then we got 20 monocolored legends that have choose a background, which is basically partner for backgrounds, and 20 common and uncommon backgrounds. So you do the math, 20 times 20 is 400. There are 20 versions of Gut, True Soul Zealot. There are 20 versions of Amber Gristle O'Maul, you know? And not that every single version of her or him is good, but they exist. We'll start with talking about the 2-color legends. So we got one in each of the 10 colors, or the 10 color pairs. And what are your thoughts? Is there any of those 10 that you're really drawn to that excite you?
So the first one that I have 90% built, I'm going to finish this up tomorrow when popping into work, is Corlessa, the blue-green dragon commander. She lets you look at the top card of your library at any time, is a 1/4, and you may cast dragon spells from the top of your library. So you get to future sight for dragons.
Yeah.
One of my regular commander decks that's been one of my favorite decks for a while is my mono green flyers deck. So I play a bunch of cards that people never see, Yavimaya Nats, just all sorts of really bad, inefficient cards. So I'm used to playing these cards. This is the perfect place to play some of those because a lot of those are green dragons. There's not a ton that are available. Most of them are in either Cons block or in AFR adjacent sets, but we get a lot of dragons in the set to help out, and we'll dig into those later. But she ends up being a really good kind of block constructed feeling commander. And most importantly is she's not just another Tatiova. The problem with blue-green in our local playgroup is that almost every blue-green commander is you're drawing cards, you're gaining life, you're doing a lot of the same thing. Gretchen Twitchwillow's the same. The Cascade one's okay. You might be able to do something with a partner pair, but this is like, hey, this is a super niche commander that you can build around in blue-green and not feel like you're just playing blue-green good stuff with Ristic Study and the biggest green stuff.
Yeah. An exciting thing about this is they decided to make the teamer wedge all about dragons. So we got a new Cares About Dragons Simic one and an Is It one in Lojan Dragon's Legacy that cares about when you cast dragons and when you cast adventure spells, interestingly enough. And then there's also Thrakus the Butcher, which is basically like an uncommon Atarka the World Render for just 5 mana as a 3/4 with trample that when it attacks, double the power of all dragons you control, including itself. And it has trample. As we previously mentioned, trample and flying are big game in Artisan. And Thrakus, unlike Corlessa, Thrakus gives you access to the dragon color in red, and red and green together can definitely muster out some real scary board positions. And so Thrakus, it's funny because we were just talking about Mr. Orfeo, and Thrakus kind of puts Mr. Orfeo to shame. If you're going to lean into dragons, how would you double all of your dragons powered instead of just one of them? I feel like this guy could become a new terror of the format. And
especially since most of your dragons already have flying, so you're just going over them. Maybe some of your green stuff's going to be on the ground to help with card advantage, mana ramp, that kind of stuff. But this deck is scary.
Yeah. I'm also really excited about Commander Liara Portier. So this is the new Boros legendary. She costs 5 mana for a 5/3. Whenever you attack, spells you cast from exile this turn cost X less to cast, where X is the number of players being attacked. Then exile the top X cards to your library until end of turn you may cast spells from among those exiled cards. So assuming you're going wide attacking 3 players, it is going to impulse draw 3 cards and make all of your spells from exile cost 3 less. So, wow, one, I mean, it's a Boros card, so of course it cares about you turning things sideways, but it gives you real rewards for turning sideways. It can draw you up to 3 cards and make stuff cheap, and it affects all of your cards that have been cast from exile. So if you light up the stage after combat or anything like that, and she makes me think actually quite a bit of guys like Rakdos, Lords of Riots, or Animar, because she can make artifact spells or colorless creatures totally free. So I'm thinking about like building Commander Liara Portier as like a Boros artifact creature beatdown with the plan to cast as many things for free or nearly free off of her attack trigger as possible. So you're just going wide with mirrors and stuff.
I ended up drafting her this weekend in the pre-release, and she pairs super well with Myriad cards because you send one attacker in one direction, well, you get copies attacking all directions. I think there's a flying white one that is going to make other copies of flyers, and you'll be able to repeatedly do that. So once you have some of those cards to kind of start off and then drop Commander Liara, you can not have to commit as many cards to the board. That's the only issue that I see with these go wide decks, is that with Artisan, the value of your individual cards and what they do is a lot more because repeated card draw is a lot more scarce. But Commander Liara also makes up for that. So once you get the ball rolling, it's like cast the stuff from that exile. So she plays like an attacking Prosper, almost.
Yeah. So yeah, she's pretty exciting. We got one other card that came. So there, there's so many of them that are interesting. It's one thing that's interesting is, to me, like, I thought dungeons were really cool. I was really excited for the initiative because the initiative is like, what if dungeons but Monarch? And like, Monarch's my favorite mechanic. But then, weirdly enough, there's only one legendary creature that takes the initiative, and it's an uncommon in Rilsa Riel, the Kingpin. It's a 5-mana 2/5 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, which the initiative is a special dungeon that you can only go into while you have it, and it can be taken from you with combat damage, just like the Monarch. And Rilsa Riel also says, whenever you attack, target attacking creature gains Death Touch, and if you've completed a dungeon, that creature also gets +5/+0, First Strike, and Menace until end of turn. So that creature just ain't being blocked. Like, who wants to block a creature that's Death Touch, First Strike, and Menace, and +5/+0? So, yeah, I thought it was kind of, like, did it strike you as weird that there's only one legendary creature that gives you the initiative?
It does. The other thing that's weird is there are multiple choose a background commanders in here that have a bonus if you take the initiative, but don't inherently give it to you. I don't know if that's...
there are 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one in white, one in black, and one in blue, and... So I don't know about you, but I was expecting us to get a background that was just like, when you cast your commander, take the initiative, or something like that. Or just,
when you cast this, gain the initiative, or just something.
You know, and the thing is, the initiative, like, I guess I understand that they wanted the initiative to be kind of available to all 5 colors, but personally, I sort of feel like, so we have, so the set has its own Prismatic Piper in the Faceless one, which is it's a legendary enchantment creature background, so it can count as either your commander or a background, or technically both, and it's just as you can choose a color, and it's a 3/3 that's that color. I feel like they could have made it cost 1 more, and in addition to all that things it said, it also says you take the initiative. So people could play this, like, color, this thing that's allowed to be any color you want it to be, and it gives you the initiative, so it allows any of these background commanders to have, as its background, just you take the initiative and pick another color to be. So it's weird because, yeah, it makes... We're going to get into the partner or the background legends in a minute, but I think it makes those 3 significantly weaker because, even in full power commander, because you may not guarantee even introducing the initiative into the game. let alone holding on to it since your opponents can take it from you.
And a lot of the cards that give initiative aren't hyper powerful on their own, especially at common and uncommon. So you're kind of half of the card's power level is already set aside in the fact that getting initiative is so powerful because it's a dungeon that keeps on giving, that keeps on moving itself around everywhere. Like introducing the initiative probably adds 6 to 7 cards worth of value to a normal game because every room of that dungeon is worth about half a card. That last room is worth probably 3 cards. And that's just for one person.
Yeah, the very first room draws you a card. It searches up a basic land from your deck. So when the initiative is introduced to the game, a card gets drawn, searched for, and then anytime it is stolen for the first time, that person will get a new card. So it real quickly is drawing cards, but I feel like we should want that. One of the reasons I love things like the Monarch, I love Goad, and I was really excited about the initiative is I want to push the game along. I don't want to sit back and wait for this deck to assemble its dumb combo or whatever. Like, let's have people swinging at one another. Let's do it. So it's kind of a letdown that there's only one legendary. You know, like I have like Queen Marchesa is my favorite legendary ever printed. My Queen Marchesa deck is the commander deck that I will never take apart. Just love the Monarch so much. And so now I feel like, well, I think I'm going to have to build Rilsa Rael just because she's basically like, hey, you want to play the Monarch in Artisan? She herself is not super strong, but it is kind of cool that she can play like an uncommon, I was mentioning Camille earlier, she can make sort of like that. Like when you attack, one creature you're attacking with is going to be really hard to block. So any of these saboteurs, these combat damage creatures can likely get through, and Rilsa Riel gives you the initiative, but then she later on only cares if you've completed a dungeon. So she kind of leans you into blue-black dungeon delving anyway, so you can play all the good blue-black dungeon delving cards from back in the day, and you can play the blue and the black background commanders in the 99 because they're pretty decent if you know for certain you're going to get to the initiative, and you'll get the initiative on turn 5 every game. Possibly turn 4 if you got a mana rock.
She's also a rogue, and that lends you to a lot of those things with Skulk and Menace that like getting through and have other bonuses when they hit the opponent because you're naturally putting that target on the opponent with initiative already. Anything is giving initiative, I want to see not only what are you doing when you give me it, but also are you giving me a way to take the initiative back? So anything with flying, tokens, that kind of stuff makes that initiative card go up a step in my book, and that's why Rilsa that's probably why she has Death Touch, so that she can take back initiative a lot easier.
Yeah, and notably, those two other ones we're talking about, Safana and Imoene, are also rogues. So you might have blue-black rogues, dungeoneering, and initiative manipulation, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
This deck's sounding really good.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to put this together. But yeah, the green Y1 Kadira makes tokens, so we got another token commander. The green black one, Kaga, does kind of a decent, like a artisan impression of Muldrotha. Mahadi, Emporium Master, like, okay, you mentioned earlier Jury, and like Jury is sort of one of the dominant commanders in the format, and Mahadi and Jury are like best buds or boyfriends or something. They love making treasures and sacking treasures together. I mean, Mahadi only works on your turn, so it's only when you're killing dudes on your opponent's turn. But one thing that's kind of interests me about Mahadi, and I might end up trying to build this, is so at a powerful effect that's legal in our format, and we talk about board wipes, is Pestilence. Pestilence is legal, and so is Pyrohemia, and so is a special version of Pestilence from back in Ice Age called Withering Wisps. And so these are cards that are like repeatable board wipes that stick around, and they also damage players, so they can be used as win conditions also. And so I was thinking about like is there a black-red legendary that allows me to like really try and lean into Pestilence if I could get it. And Mahadi feels like it might do it. Because if you're waiting around to your turn and you're blowing up the board with Pestilence and Pyrohemia, then at end of turn you just get to make a big stack of treasure tokens that you can use to fuel Pestilence later or fuel and Exsanguinate later. So that's the one way I could think about building Mahadi differently than I would build Jury. But I feel like Mahadi's just going to go in the 99 of Jury.
Mahadi giving the mana ramp is really good. The other thing is that Mahadi sees every creature that died this turn. So if you have ways to recur more things out of the graveyard, the one that comes to mind in these colors is Garna the Bloodflame. When it enters the battlefield, return to your hand all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from anywhere this turn. So you can find a way to sack all your things, play Garna the Bloodflame, get all those back. You're going to get a ton of treasure at the end of turn with Mahadi. So that might help get stuff going. And all these are in Red-Black Sacrifice, and we have a lot of really good Reanimator cards too to just make use out of these cards.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So then, so those are we just spent some time on the 2-color ones, but the other thing to talk about is the fact that we have, as mentioned, 20 new legends that are uncommons that allow you to choose a background. And one thing I want to say right off the bat is I know there's some people who I've seen some content creators talk about how they're sort of disappointed in the background commanders power level wise, how they compare to partners. But I suspected, and then it was confirmed by Gavin Verhey, that the idea is that these are going to be individually more powerful than your typical partner because the backgrounds themselves are going to be weaker than a traditional partner. Because the goal is not to have, you don't want this legendary to be as powerful or you don't want a background to be as powerful as a legendary creature because they wanted them to be relatively cheap casting cost wise and also to be worth consideration in the 99 of other decks. And I think a lot of them really are. And so then you look at some of these legendary creatures and they feel like they didn't need to choose a background on them. I could see a world where Ganax Astral Hunter, who's just a dragon that makes treasures when other dragons enter the battlefield, he feels like I could see them just printing him without choose a background. So, Ganax. So I should talk about it. Ganax is a 5-mana, 3/4 flying dragon that whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token. So you get the treasure token right then. It's not like Mahadi, so there's definitely some combo potential, I'm sure. But Ganax pairs really well with several backgrounds, but the one that I think interests me the most is Feywild Visitor, a 3-mana commander creatures you control have whenever one or more non-token creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. And Ganax doesn't care if the dragons entering the battlefield are token or not. So if you have these both in play and you hit 3 opponents, you make 3 1/1s and you make 3 treasures. And if anyone's played against Malcolm from the first one, making 3 treasures and, it can spiral out of control really quick.
Malcolm in Breaches is one of my favorite decks before we were playing Artisan, and now I have both an Artisan and regular version, and it gets really out of hand. I'm very happy that Feywild Visitor says combat damage, because that really levels the playing field there.
Yeah, it's really surprising to me that those 2 triggers were not combat damage. Maybe they were thinking hee with Lightning Rigger Crew, but it's but it also makes infinite combos with these other pirates.
And we have 2 new infinite combos in the set because of it, which we'll get to after we're done with the legendary creatures here.
So yeah, is there, it's hard to go. I guess we could go through all 20 of them, but I don't think we should do that. I think instead, let's talk about the ones that we think are the most exciting for the format, either because they do something new or because they're just really powerful, considering combining them with a background. And And so I just talked about Ganax, but there's actually two other backgrounds that deal with dragons. One, Disciple Acolyte of Bahamut, makes your first dragon spell each turn cost 2 less. So between Ganax making treasures and Disciple making your dragons cheaper, you can play a version of Gruul dragons. If you don't want to be doubling their powers with Thrakus, you can be just churning out a lot more of them a lot faster with Ganax and Acolyte.
A lot of the tokens ones are really good. The Cloakwood Hermit, beginning of your end step, if a creature is put in the graveyard from anywhere, you're making 2 tap squirrels. That is just filling up your board really quickly.
Yeah, I like.
So
I
a
like
lot
the
of your
potential.
green-white tokens decks get better.
Yeah, I like the potential of that one with Lulu, Loyal Hollyphant. Lulu's a 3-mana 3/2 flyer. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control and then untap them. So if Lulu is a Cloakwood Hermit and a permanent leaves your battlefield, you get to stack the trigger, so you first make 2 tapped squirrels, and then you untap them and make them into 2/2s. So she can quickly make some big gnarly squirrels.
The most unique looking out of the uncommon not partners, but choose a background. I just wish that they had a name themselves that was one word, because it's easier to talk about them. So it's the choose a background legends.
I guess it's the background legendaries and the backgrounds.
Yeah. Is Rasad in Bashir. This is the 0/3 human monk for 2 and a white. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, so very similar to like Doran the Siege Tower. When he attacks, if you have the initiative, double the toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. Means that we have to do that whole initiative thing going on, but even if we ignore that line of rules text, just having access to like a walls style deck, granted we have to figure out a way to get rid of Defender, but that just seems like a fun problem to try to solve, and that's my favorite thing with Commander and these offshoots of Commander.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting that like Rashad just has the rules text of Doran right there on there, and is the right color, the right mana cost for it. I was thinking about Rasad being paired with blue, and I think a good one to pair him with is Sword Coast Sailor. I think Sword Coast Sailor is one of my favorite of the backgrounds because it's so cheap and it kind of gives you exactly what you want. It's a 2-mana. Commander creatures you control have, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, this creature can't be blocked. So as long as you're attacking your opponent who's in the lead, your commander just can't be blocked. So this allows Rasad to attack with impunity, and it puts you in blue so that you have access to High Alert from Ravnica Allegiance, I think, which is one of those people fight with their butts, they lose Defender, and it also has like an activated to untap things. Plus you're in blue, which gives you access to more of the initiative taking things. I think in a Rasad deck you have access to like 9 effects that give you the initiative, so still not a ton, but you're in blue, so you can also play some card draw and some things like Impulse that can help filter through your deck real fast to find something that'll give you the initiative. And then blue also gives you plenty of big butt creatures, so yeah, I definitely am excited on Rasad. One of them who is like really exciting, and I think even outside of our format, is Abdel Adrian, Gorian's Ward. I've been told that it's pronounced Gorian. Abdel Adrian is a 5-mana 4/4. When he enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until Abdel Adrian leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. So this guy is a legendary World Gorger dragon. And
gives you an army for it too?
And it gives you an army for it too. And so right off the bat, you could build Abdel Adrian fairly and just make a bunch of cheap crap that you don't mind exiling, like Wellsprings or, prophetic prism or creatures with ETBs, and have Abdel come in, make a bunch of 1/1s, and have Abdel act like a what's that wandering battlement or whatever, that legendary creature that can tuck all of your creatures underneath it. So he can do that, or as we mentioned earlier, all of the best reanimation spells, including all the best reanimation enchantments, are legal in this format. So you can play Animate Dead, Necromancy, and Dance of the Dead. And now Abdel Adrian is creating X number, like infinite soldiers. As long as you have one other permanent to put away. I guess you don't even need that, because it's just, if you have Abdel Adrian and you sack him to a Viscera Seer, and then you animate dead him back into play. And the way the combo works is now the Animate Dead is on the battlefield, attached to Adrian. Adrian's ability is on the stack. You resolve his ability, removing the Animate Dead from the game, along with that Viscera Seer. You're going to get your 2 soldiers. Abdel Adrian is now dead because he lost his Animate Dead, so he's going to leave. Go to your graveyard. That's going to cause your Viscera Seer and your Animate Dead to come back from exile, rinse and repeat ad infinitum. And because you have a Viscera Seer, you can be sacrificing all of these soldiers to dig through your deck for the 1 Blood Artist you need for this to deal infinite damage to all your opponents.
For this, I'm thinking Agent of the Iron Throne as a background.
Bingo.
That's Commander. Yeah, Commander creatures you own have, whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So all those tokens, all that sacrifice aristocrats things, just start really popping off with that.
Yeah, I think Agent of the Iron Throne probably, in my mind, takes the cake for background most likely to show up in the 99 of decks. Like, this is a good effect. Like, this is Bastion of Remembrance, basically. But also triggers off artifacts. So I'm just like, woohoo, another card for Jury. I feel like I should take this moment to mention that there is a Discord server for Artisan that I definitely recommend. Y'all check down in the show notes. We have links to it. But one of the running gags during the spoiler season for this set has been, another great card for Jury. And because pretty much anything that makes a lot of treasure or makes sacrifice fodder or triggers off sacrifice, like Agent of the Iron Throne, is just, maybe I should consider this for Jury. A background that just really excited me, and they saved it to the very last day, and I now want to be like, Wizards, you got to be like showing this off. Give these to more. There are desperate content creators that would love to show off a card like this. Is Tavern Brawler. 2 in a red, legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. This creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the card's mana cost. You may play that card this turn. So this is bare minimum Outpost Siege, which is a very playable rare for 1 less mana. So our format is like, yes, we get an Outpost Siege, hooray! But then on top of it, it can beef up your commander with like a huge power boost. Like this definitely goes in the 99 of that Commander Liara Portier, because now she's getting even more buffed, and when she attacks, she's going to make that card from exile cost less.
I'm thinking any evasive choose a background commanders here, so like Lulu, any of the flying ones, any of the ones with Menace, Death Touch, those are all like comboing super well with it. Throw this on Wilson, because that trample goes over, so now we're just attacking in there.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a solid one. Let's see. So a pairing that I think is kind of so one of the legends that I think is kind of interesting is Iranus Gloomstalker, a 3-mana 3/3 Death Touch Halfling Ranger. Whenever Iranus Gloomstalker attacks, return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is pretty cool because we haven't previously had a Crucible of Worlds effect really in Artisan, so that's kind of exciting. But I was trying to think of like what sort of backgrounds combo well with Iranus, and I think a really interesting one is Street Urchin. Street Urchin is 1 in a red. Commander creatures you own have pay 1 and sacrifice another artifact or creature. This creature deals 1 damage to any target. Now that's significant because it's your commander that's doing the damage, and Aranis natively has Death Touch, so anytime you sacrifice an artifact or creature to Street Urchin, you're going to be killing creatures that you point the damage at. But a thing that I think is kind of clever is it says sacrifice a creature or an artifact to trigger this ability. Well, we have artifact lands and creature lands that Aranis can throw at people as she's attacking and be bringing back from the grave with her ability. So you can throw the red-green artifact bridge, or throw a great furnace at somebody with her ability on the stack, and then return the great furnace to the battlefield.
Aranis with strip mine legal seems.
Yeah, strip mine and wasteland.
That's a low-hanging fruit there, but that's what's really scaring me is finding ways to make that work.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's just on attack, so it's not an infinite loop.
One other combo that I've definitely brewed a deck around, and I think I might play in the stream, is Amber Gristle O'Maul. She's a 4-mana 3/3 haste dwarf cleric. Whenever she attacks, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw a card for each player being attacked. So, similar trigger earlier, she really likes Myriad. But, it's a pretty steep thing, asking you to discard your hand to draw 1, 2, or 3 cards. But I thought about pairing her with Criminal Past. Criminal Past costs 2 and a black. Commander creatures you control have Menace, and this creature gets +X/+O, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So now she's rewarding, Criminal Past rewards you for throwing away your handful of creatures because it's going to make Amber bigger, and it gives Amber Menace, so she's harder to block. And it puts you in red-black, which gives you access to a lot of the best Madness cards.
I'm a very big Tybalt fan, so anything that we can do while we're discarding cards makes me super happy. Fiery Temper, you can run Bump in the Night, because you can
Flash
bring
it
that
back.
Yeah. Finding enough of the Madness creatures because you want to up that creature count with Criminal Pass is going to be the fun challenge there.
Yeah, we got things like Reckless Worm. This is Blazing Rootwalla's time to shine, because Blazing Rootwalla, Madness for free. Also, Return from the Netherworld is also Madness for free, but you also got some real cheap. You got Dark Withering, just 1 black. So as she attacks, I'm going to attack you, Tony, with your 1 blocker who's not black. I will discard and pay 1 black to kill it with Murderous Impulse or Dark Withering. Also, Amber seems like she could be cool with things like Reassembling Skeleton and stuff, like creatures you don't mind throwing away now that you can get back later. And I also like that she has haste, so give me a commander with haste any day. I love knowing that it's going to get to do its thing the turn you play it. But I will say, I appreciate that more and more they're printing guys worded like Allura, Merry Thief, or Commander Liara Portier, which just says when you attack, this triggers. It's not when this creature attacks. So you can play Allura and then attack with a creature that doesn't have Summoning Sickness and get Allura's triggered ability. Allura, by the way, is a 3-mana 3/2. Whenever you attack, up to 1 target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn, then return that creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. The thing that excites me about Allura is there are a lot of common and uncommon ninjas, but we don't have a ninja commander yet, and Allura seems kind of right up that alley. You definitely want a way to make your ninjas not be able to block, and bouncing them back to your hand is actually a bonus. So let's combine Allura with one of the black backgrounds, again, maybe Criminal Past, or I also like Agent of the Shadow Thieves, 2 mana in black. Whenever your commander creatures have, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. Well, Death Touch and Indestructible basically means unblockable in my mind. I don't want to block it unless I'm throwing something useless in front of it. So Agent seems to allow you to kind of attack pretty recklessly with Allura while using her triggered ability on a ninja or somebody else that you want.
Yeah, I love this whole cycle. So there's one background in each color that has that dethrone kind of trigger for attacking the highest player.
Oh
Granted, that
yeah,
means that
okay.
you can combo that with dethrone cards um, from Conspiracy,
Hmm.
but all those are just really good on your more aggressive uh, background legends.
Yeah, and I appreciate the way they worded it because like dethrone, if you were the one on the throne, dethrone just didn't do anything. So I like that they
Yeah,
modified it as being, well, it's whichever of your opponents is on the throne.
yeah.
Um, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Vol Candlekeep Researcher, which might be up there with Abdel Adrian as far as most powerful of these background commanders. Vol is a 4-mana 2/3 with Vigilance in blue that has tap to add an amount of colorless mana equal to Vol's toughness. This mana can't be spent on spells cast from your hand. Well, right away you can combine it with Tavern Brawler, and you can use Vol's mana to cast the Brawled card. But you can use this mana on activated abilities. So Vol with a Umbral Mantle equipped to her makes infinite mana.
Okay, that's how we break
Yeah.
it.
Anything that allows you to spend mana into it to untap things. Now we don't have a whole bunch of them at common and uncommon, but Umbral Mantle like definitely does it. But it's interesting. Like Vol can be essentially just a mana maker, like a mana focused version of Vega, and play a lot of like flashback spells. But the fact that you can use Vol's ability on activated abilities means anything that spells that just untap it, like refocus and stuff like that, suddenly become really strong when you're buffing up Vol's toughness and can then use a cheap spell from your hand to untap Vol. You'd be making tons and tons of colorless mana that you can then feed into the activated ability of an artifact or another creature.
So one background we haven't touched on yet, which is really powerful, is Far Traveler. So this is the commander creatures you own have at the beginning of your end step exile up to one target tapped creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. We were talking about Blink commanders, how those have continued to just get better ETBs, better things to rebuy there. So you could pair this with one of the blue commanders to be in those right colors, or you could kind of move that effect around in the other colors that haven't had access to repeatable flicker. The one thing that makes it fair is that you have to get that creature tapped, but we saw a lot of these other things help make things unblockable or give flying to kind of even that out and get it so that you have this creature tapped and can keep on grinding value out of this. I'm surprised this one's not rare, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we only got like there was just like a couple of rare backgrounds. I guess there's one in each color, um, and then some that were in the precons. But they really kept these backgrounds mostly in the realms of common and uncommon, much to our appreciation. But yeah, I mean, I do love myself some Blink. I mean, we didn't even talk about, and maybe it's because like this creature just sort of got outshined in my mind by Lagrella being printed right before it. But OG, the Exquisite Blade, which is the Azorius human monk, it's enough to make me be like, how much do I like Lagrella? OG's a 4-mana 2/3 that when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and scry 2. Very decent, enter the battlefield. And whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile up to one target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. One, I love this way they figured out how to like represent monks. It's like when you cast your second spell, when you do the Fists of Fury, this thing happens. And so it's kind of interesting that like OG's like, yeah, play a bunch of cheap spells and creatures with cool enter the battlefield abilities. So like the aforementioned, like we talked about, slip out the back and that sort of thing become. But like any of these just little like, oh yeah, I'm gonna brainstorm and do this, and then I'm gonna blink my Mull Drifter or blink my rambunctious mutt or whatever.
Or Cloud Goat Ranger, get a million Kithkin
Oh
out,
yeah,
all the like army in a can cards. OG's just fantastic.
yeah, yeah. It's cool because like I appreciate that it plays in a different space than Lagrella. Like there's two decks that both like share they share colors and they share things they like. Like both decks are going to play Momentary Blink and Ephemerate and that sort of thing, but they're going to be using them in very different ways. So I really appreciate that they're leaning more into giving us like Blink as a fun resource that is really helping white. Like I feel like we were, it was just a year and a half ago we were all complaining about how weak white is, and now I feel like white is in a really, especially after this set, that they printed a lot of rares in the last two sets that have really like set white up for success. I feel like they could stop printing good white cards for a minute. But they've definitely been given a lot of good white cards at common and uncommon in this set. In fact, another background we didn't even talk about, and this is another background that probably will show up in the 99 even more often than it'll show up in the command zone, is Inspiring Leader, 3 mana. Commander creatures you own have creature tokens you control get +2/+2. It's just 3 mana. All your tokens get +2/+2. All your squirrels are 3/3s. All of your fairy dragons are 3/3s. That's a lot of power and toughness pumping for just 3 mana.
I'm trying to think which black creature I can pair with this, so that I can end up in the black-white kind of like spirit token kind of stuff. That way we can flashback the Dark Ascension one that has
Lingering Souls.
Lingering Souls, yeah. That way we could keep that going.
Ooh,
Maybe we run that with Sivris.
Yeah, I was thinking Sivris. Yeah, why don't you talk about Sivris?
So Sivris is sacrifice another creature or artifact for each opponent. You mill a card, then return that card from your graveyard to your hand unless that player pays 3 life. So run a bunch of creature tokens to go wide with that. All of them are going to get +2/+2 from the background, and then we're just dwindling down that life total on both fronts with attacking with an army and with Sivris self-milling you a bit.
Yeah, I like that Sivris's trigger is a flat 3 life, because sometimes this effect is based on like the mana value of the card, and so it means your opponents just get a free roll to deny you a land. But Sivris is like most likely going to get you a lot of lands, which I like. I mean, like drawing lands is boring, but it's also very necessary. Like you don't want to be missing land drops, and so it's pretty exciting that Sivris can draw you up to like 3 cards in a turn cycle, and even if it doesn't, it's like hitting everybody's life total for a bunch, and so then you can play life loss doublers like Warlock class. I'm a big fan of like Warlock class is one of my favorite artisan cards. Just so much value at every level. And also, if you're in black-white, this will give you access to Vizkopa Guildmage, which also doubles life loss. And so, yeah, maybe, and black-white tokens is already like pretty much black-white's strong premier way to play in Artisan, because you got things like the least Reverent Medium. And in this set, Minthara Merciless Soul, which I'm pretty excited for. This might be my favorite black-white tokens legend. This is the first uncommon creature that cares about experience points. She's a 4-mana 2/2. She has Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience. And creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. So at most, you can only get 1 experience per turn cycle, but you can pretty much set up to where you definitely get one every turn cycle that Minthara makes it to your end step. You're going to get an experience counter, and after a while, she essentially gains hexproof. Once you have like 5 or 6 experience, like no one's going to be able to target her. And in the meanwhile, she's giving like all of your spirit dummies become like 6/1s, 7/1s with flying. So she seems like she can spiral out of control pretty quick. Yeah. Whew.
So I want to do a quick zoom out, because we were talking about partner and how it compares to Choose a Background, and people talking about how it's depowered and that kind of stuff. You and I just went back and forth, and for a lot of these is, I want to make this deck, and I start off with this background. What do we pair it with? And now both of us are going, well, wait a second, you take this, and then you do that. Having these be so much more specific is great. The other thing is that, like, partner honestly, like, was having candy for dinner. We got two powerful legends that we can attack with, that we can deal commander damage with, and having so that you just have that one commander that you're dealing commander damage with, and you have this other way to augment your game plan and lean into that commander more. It feels more D&D is the most important thing, because it's your character that you're suiting up, that you're making this thing. But for deck building is also, we've made this more unique deck to what we're trying to do, and especially where we only have access to commons and uncommons, we're able to hone down these more specific cards. And that also means that we can find these old prophecy uncommons that work for this like, and that's my favorite thing, is finding that one finding the cauldron dances of the world to work for this very specific game plan that we have. And that's because they went the route that they did with Choose a Background.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that really excites me even broader just about our format is before I started getting excited about Artisan, a set will come out, and if you're playing full power commander, a set will come out and you'll maybe be excited about 10 or 15 cards that come out. Like 10 or 15, almost always rares. But now the commons and uncommons that come out, when I see something come out that a lot of these like Amber, Gristle, Omal would not excite me at all if there wasn't a common and uncommon only format. But now, because there is, I'm like, ooh, madness! I can play Violent Eruption.
Yes.
Now I'm like excited, because also I was listening the other day, the MMcast, which is another Magic podcast I hadn't heard of before, but they did a episode just this week on Artisan format. So shout out to them for boostering our favorite format, and they were talking about how they had noticed in their local meta that Artisan felt like decks seemed a bit more tuned, because you have this, like, already you are limited because of commons and uncommons, where you really want to squeeze the juice out of every card in your deck. So the decks feel almost more pushed, because they can't really become CDH. They can come close. I mean, you mentioned that, Demonic Consultation, Lab Man are legal, so you can essentially make CDH Artisan decks. But even if you're not, if we were going with like that Aranis Street Urchin deck, well, there is a way to make the optimal Aranis Street Urchin Artisan deck, and it totally pays to make it as optimal as possible, because you want the deck humming, you want it firing on all cylinders. And if you can do that, then your little deck that can hold its own at a table with people playing full power Magic. And I appreciate that it then, in a way that Commander really feels like it used to do, it really encourages me to dig deep into Magic's past to find, like, oh man, there was this uncommon that allowed you to sack artifacts. Great, this is definitely going in my deck,
It's very similar to when people hear about Pauper as a format, and they go, oh, I'm just playing whatever, draft jank and that kind of stuff. And you go, no, sit down and actually play a Pauper tournament. And you realize that it's Legacy. It's Legacy Light, as a lot of people call it, and you have these really powerful effects going on. It's just that we've started off all on the same page to get started with playing and deck building. There are some limitations to the format, but that does mean that, like, a lot of us are also coming to a lot of the same conclusions when it comes to what is optimal with these decks. So when we're talking Red-Black Sacrifice, you're going to see a lot of sameness with there, but that's also the fun, is there are rewards for the people who are digging through the bulk bins at their LGS and going, oh, I found this uncommon that nobody's ever heard of from Nemesis. Let's go and grab that and try that out and try to surprise people. So it's still part of Commander that allows and rewards exploration, and that's the part that I've felt has been lacking the past few years, is that you click in EDH rec and everything is solved, and that's not necessarily the case here.
It's interesting you bring that up because on the Artisan Discord just the other day, a person on there had commented, hey, is there any sort of database for Artisan decks yet? And I was like, no, they're not that I'm aware of. But if anybody has like, website building skills and wants to put something together, I'm sure the community would like it. But they had said something, something like an EDH rec for Artisan. And not to knock EDH rec, because I've definitely used the website, but I do think there is something to say about how it has contributed to the solving of Commander in a way, in that, we've definitely seen, things like 3-mana rocks fall off by the wayside, and certain effects that used to be like staples like Solemn Simulacrum are barely showing up, and it's it's in part, I think, because EDH rec has shown oh, you could actually make your deck more fast and more efficient if you made it cheaper. And so in a way, I kind of don't want there to be an Artisan EDH rec, because it is so much more fun to just go to Scryfall, type in I'm looking for things that let me sack an artifact, common, uncommon, go, And
I can type in budget, but that's only gonna help so far, because there's a lot of budget rares too.
Yeah. And I think, some people have asked me, why don't you just play budget instead? And on the one hand, I do appreciate that, that Artisan is not inherently budget. I mean, there are things like Mana Drain and Force of Will and Demonic Tutor that are all legal, that are certainly not budget. But one of the problems I always have building a budget deck is, how do you do it? How do you find a database that ranks cards based on how much they cost? And especially with the market changing, whales come in and
budget last year is expensive this year, depending on what's going on. So I can build $100 deck now, and next year it could be $50 or it could be $500. Who knows?
And I would hate to be so excited about a certain legendary creature or a certain deck archetype and build my budget Commander deck, and then one or two of the cards that were really linchpins spike. Viridian Revel is a card that I'm a big fan of. It's the green enchantment that says whenever an opponent's artifact dies, you draw a card. And it's an uncommon, so it definitely sees some play in Artisan, especially with all the treasures floating around, but especially since treasures have become, if not a problem, they've definitely become ubiquitous in Commander. So Viridian Revel has been almost like a green Rhystic study more and more. And so this card that used to be 15 cents or something is now several bucks. And, warranted so, but if you were playing one of these Magic formats, there's $25 budget, right? Quarter Magic or whatever, where every card in your deck has to be worth a quarter. You just can't get Viridian Revel anymore. And it would bum me out if pretty much at this point, because there are so many people coming into the game and getting excited about the game, that if you are an old common, uncommon, or rare that hasn't been reprinted, with each year that you go by not being reprinted, your real life cost increases by 50%. We're seeing it, they reprint Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots in almost every Commander set, and Lightning Greaves is still an $8 card.
Swiftfoot Boots might finally be less than $1 because it's at common in the new set. So that's one that I just finished pricing stuff for the store for. At time of recording this, Baldur's Gate is coming out literally tomorrow, and so all the prices are super fresh in my brain, and that's the weird part.
Yeah, you're right. So a Swiftfoot Boots from Commander Legends Baldur's Gate, this is the first time it's sub $1.
And it'll just go down because people will draft this.
Maybe to make sure that we don't go over for too much, let's maybe get to just a few of the cards that we're really excited about that are not Legends, and then we'll wrap it up.
That sounds good. We could keep going for days.
Yeah.
I work at an LGS, so my regular full-time job is talking and getting people excited about Magic. Kess was talking on Twitter the other day of, there's a lot of pros in Magic who aren't pro Magic players. What kind of pro Magic thing are you? I'm a pro Magic hype person. That's what I do.
Yeah.
So I've literally for 8 hours a day hyped up Baldur's Gate, and half the time I'm talking about Artisan because I want people playing because I love this format.
I mean, this is such a great set to get people into Artisan. It's like, okay, now that you're done with your draft, because I think I got to draft Commander Legends 1 once, and I drafted a Jury deck, and at the end of it, I was like, man, Jury's actually real good. You know, now that's like no duh, but at the time, it was just like, wow, this card's real good. And so I think that now is a great time to be like, oh, you drafted your Commander Legends Baldur's Gate. Did you like your Legend? Would you like to build an all commons and uncommons deck around it? Because you've got a good base here.
The other thing that's really cool is, granted, circumstantial evidence with opening stuff, but if you open a set box or a draft box, roughly you're going to open anywhere between 16 and 18 of the adventure, the background cards that you need, and about 16 to 18 of the individual choose a background legends that you can. So out of my one box that I got, I have almost all the pairs that I need to just mix and match however I want, not including all the two-color legends, not including all the rares that you can get out of that set. So that just makes the booster box that you are going to get anyway, just makes it so much better.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's we're gonna wrap things up here, but we're gonna take a moment to just talk about a few of the cards that are not legends from this set that excites us for this format. So why don't you talk about one that you really like, Tony?
So my number one here is Cloak of the Bat. It looks very deceptively simple, but it hits all those things that we have been talking about are useful in the format. So it's a 2-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets flying and haste and equips for 2. So as we're getting to that late game board stall, we cast our commander. We want to make sure that it's not waiting around too much. Be able to just get in with that, and that evasion allows you to close through games. In draft, this ends up taking a lot of your big beefy creatures and speeding that up a turn. And a turn matters a ton when it comes to multiplayer format. Yeah,
when one of your turns equals 3 of your opponent's turns. Plus you get to play with this sick art. This art's amazing. Looks like straight out of Batman, right? I'm sure that's the point, right?
Yeah, Dominic Meyer's been doing a lot of the very iconic looking kill spells, did a bunch of stuff from Crimson Vow, a lot of the Art Deco stuff in New Capenna. I love every card they do. It's so good. Very cool. All right, well, I'm going to say that I'm really excited about Irenicus's Vile Duplication. I'm so surprised this is not rare. It's 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and is not legendary if that creature is legendary. So this is Spark Double that instead of the +1/+1 counter has flying. Like, what? So if you like clones, and if you like cloning your commander, and you want the ability to have that isn't legendary text, which is almost always exclusively reserved for rare, now you could do it at uncommon in this format, and it's on a spell. So if the thing you're duplicating is like an Eternal Witness or an Archaeomancer, you can also then just get back Irenicus's Vile Duplication and do it all over again. Upgrading our rares just left and right here. Yeah. I'm going to jump in here with Wild Magic Surge. It's red instant. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a permanent that shares a card type with that permanent. So if I target a creature, it gets a creature. Target enchantment, gets an enchantment. They put that card onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. So we have a Chaos Warp that is legal in the format now. Red can take care of enchantments. I'm so excited. It's very exciting. And it's
it's cheap to play too, just 2 mana. It's not an instant, but like it has all the other spice that you'd really want. So it's really nice. Like, I mean, I don't see how this isn't like an auto include in every red Artisan deck, because it literally answers anything. Now the answer might turn into something worse, but I mean that's the fun of it, right? Like it's like, well, I have absolutely no answer for this, so I may have answer for the next thing it turns into.
Red is easy to keep up in most decks because it's a 2-color. One thing we were talking about on the Discord was in your 3-color decks, it's going to be a little bit harder to make sure that works for the mana. So that is one of the small only downsides of running your Cormellas and other stuff. But you could probably sequence your turn to make that work somehow.
Oh yeah, and I might have misspoken. I think I had for a second forgotten and thought Wild Magic Surge was a sorcery, but it is an instant. So yeah, if you're just holding 2 red up, you can always answer one thing. It may be turned into something worse, but an exciting thing is if you're having to answer a creature that's attacking you, you at least answered a threat for a turn, you know. I'm going to talk about Your Temple is Under Attack. That costs 2 and a white. It's an instant. Choose one. Pray for Protection, which gives creatures you control indestructible into turn, or Strike a Deal. You and target opponent each draw 2 cards. Now, I wanted to talk about this because, one, I think this is it's really great. Giving your entire board indestructible. White has a lot of these effects at 3 mana, but I think this might be one of the strongest ones, because you could leave up that 3 mana. Like, if you're sniffing a board wipe, like there might be a board wipe happening, you can leave up 3 mana, but if it gets around to it's about to be your turn, and you didn't spend that 3 mana on anything, it was a waste. So this has a failsafe Strike a Deal where you and target opponent each get to draw 2 cards. And I admit that I used to be a bit sour on these effects. When Secret Rendezvous came out, I was like, but I will say that the guys over at MTG Goldfish, Saffron Olive and Richard, have really actually turned my mind around on these sorts of effects. And I'm a big fan of politics. And the cool thing about an effect like Strike a Deal is you don't have to strike a deal with the arch enemy. Like, in fact, you never would. You strike a deal with the other person who's like struggling to get back, because then you can also make the deal good. It's like, hey, Tony, how about you and I just not attack each other for a little bit and we can both draw some cards? And you'll be like, sure, man, because we're both struggling. Like, if we're both in last place, then yeah. And so in a way, Strike a Deal draws me 4 cards because it drew me 2, and it drew my teammate, my at least temporary teammate, 2 cards.
2 cards that are going in a different direction and not your face.
Right. So if you're playing like your Circara the Bold deck, it's like, sweet, that's 2 burn spells I'm putting not towards my creatures. So yeah, I really like that Your Temple is Under Attack. It gives you a failsafe if there wasn't a board wipe to protect against, and gives you the ability to make allies that can be really helpful when you're behind. So Your Temple is Under Attack is just a great, like, when you're behind, you want this card in your hand.
Speaking of board wipes, I'm going to jump in with Cloud Kill. This is 4 black for a sorcery. All creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So if your commander costs 4 mana, Cloud Kill deals 4 damage, doesn't deal damage, -X. So it gets around that indestructible we were just talking. Black has like one other spell that's very similar to this from Commander Legends that gives -4/-4 to everything that sees a ton of play. Also for 6 mana, so like
Feast of Succession. Yes. It also grants the Monarch, yeah.
So this is a little bit more flexible in how much it can be weakening the board. It doesn't give you that extra card advantage, but that's fine because honestly we're running this because it's a board wipe on its own.
Yeah. A card that I'm excited about is Pegasus Guardian. We've talked a bit about blinking. Pegasus Guardian is a common, and I don't know how a card with this many words on it can be a common. So Pegasus Guardian, it's a creature with adventure. Its adventure half is called Rescue the Foal. 1 and a white, instant adventure. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it's just a cloud shift. But then Pegasus Guardian itself is a 6-mana 3/3 flyer. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 white Pegasus creature token with flying. So this is like exactly what a blink deck wants. It is both a blink spell and a blink payoff on one card. It's a blink payoff that can eventually win you the game. All at common. I'm just we talked about already Lagrella and OG and Far Traveler, and this just is at home in all those decks.
This is very emblematic of the adventure cards that they printed in the set, where the ones from original Throne of Eldraine were just two different things of value. Most of them were on smaller creatures. Almost all the creatures with adventure in this set are large, big creatures, good game finishers. And their adventures are small situational spells, which means they are the perfect thing for Artisan, because it kind of does that best of one kind of thing where, oh, I have counter target non-creature spell, and then on the other half it's a dragon, so I can hold up that kind of stuff. There's multiple different dragons that are exactly what I just said there, in different colors. One of them's in green. It's great.
Yeah, the green one's really good. The green one counters an activated ability as its spell half. So you're
we
getting
get Stifle for 3 mana.
Yeah. Yeah, not bad. Similar to that, there's Guardian Naga, which is its adventure half is a 3-mana instant, exile target artifact or enchantment. So that card's already playable. And then Guardian Naga is a 7-mana 5/6 with vigilance. On your turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to Guardian Naga. Again, it has vigilance, so Guardian Naga can just free roll an attack on your turn, no questions asked. So it's essentially like a targeted abyss, but it also, this set is filled with when you attack triggers. So Guardian Naga is always down to clown and trigger those attack triggers, while also being stapled onto a versatile removal spell on the front.
This card, I just realized, it's all damage, so you can run this in a deck with Pyrrhemia or Pestilence, and then just spam that, and then Naga's still around, so you don't have to sacrifice them. Wow. So the combos just keep on finding themselves.
Yeah.
I like Githzerai Monk. It is a flash flying creature for 5 mana in white. And when it enters the battlefield, you tap all
creatures you don't control.
Yes. So for your blink targets, for your Lagrella decks, your OG decks, this is just repeated, kind of like a Stonehorn Dignitary number 2 kind of thing of like, okay, I'm going to really use this to tap out the boards. This one I think is going to be a little bit better because it actually taps the thing so that you can attack into them. And that's just really powerful. Plus you can flash that on their end step and then start getting your blink engines going.
Yeah. I think we can start wrapping it up now. One thing we did talk about the initiative, and there are, unfortunately not a ton of cards that grant the initiative. But I do appreciate that the ones that do grant the initiative, by and large, do cool things. Dungeoneer's Pack gives you just a ton of value for just one card. Trailblazer's Torch, I think, is secretly not so bad, because it's 4 mana artifact, so it can go in any of these decks, gives you the initiative, it equips for just 1, and whenever a crit creature becomes blocked, it deals 2 damage to each creature that's blocking it. So it's pretty decent at taking back the initiative too, because if you're going to block, you have to block with something significant to kill the torchbearer. And even if they're throwing, paltry stuff in front of it, like you're just going to automatically kill a bunch of stuff that blocks it. And oh man, and if the creature has Death Touch, like if it's Aranis carrying the Trailblazer's Torch, then it's super unblockable, right? So I appreciate that they gave that. There's another one. Feywild Caretaker that gives you the initiative and then end of turn makes you a fairy dragon if you have the initiative. Well, you're definitely going to have the initiative at the end of the turn that the Feywild Caretaker comes into play. So now you have a 1/1 flyer that can either protect the initiative or next turn go get it back. So I liked that. But so we've been chatting for quite a bit. It's been really great to have you on, Tony. So, where can the people find you online? Are you a content creator or a shit poster on the internet?
A little bit of neither. I am more of a community member. So you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram. I post art. I do some cosplaying. I do some judging. I wear pretty much every hat possible with magic. You can find me at Houst of Cards. That's Houst, like my last name, of Cards, at pretty much all those different places there. When I'm not doing that, I'm running my two game stores, Double Midnight Comics, in New Hampshire. So you can check that out if you're ever in the New England area.
Great. Do y'all have an online store, or is it just brick and mortar?
So it's brick and mortar. We also are on TCG Player, so you can check us out there. You can also follow us on Twitter, DM Comics as well.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure we're going to have Tony on for some future streams. And just another shout out, everyone, to join the Artisan Discord server. We have the invite link is in the show description, so get on there. There's lots of exciting talk, especially when spoiler season starts coming around. If you are ready to be excited about every card being spoiled and not just the rares, it's a good community to be a part of. And yeah, I think that's it. So next week, Alex and Ben should be back on. But thanks for joining in, and encourage people around you to try building Commander without the rares. And so we'll see you next time. This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.